Suzuki was a music teacher, and he said something once that I think relates to spirituality as well. And he said, if you were playing a piece of music and you make a mistake, and you make that mistake over and over again, for every one time you made that mistake, you have to do it 100 times right
Hmm.
to really ingrain it in you. And if you think about it, even when you start going, oh, there's more, and even when you find your more, because I don't believe it's in any, what's right for you in finding what that more is might be different for me. But once you start that path and you find it, it doesn't mean, oh, okay, I've arrived. It actually means I'm beginning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you are watching or listening. This is the Holistic Monitor, and I'm your host, Nick Sconia. The Holistic Monitor is a wellness podcast featuring life energy research, health and wellness transformation, self-improvement and empowerment, philosophy, spirituality, and now guest interviews as well. We look forward to your comments on our YouTube channel at Holistic Monitor, and you can also listen on the go with us at Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. And with that, let's get today's show started. Theresa Contaxis,
Yes.
you have written a book, and it's a book about the soul's journey, but told through the eyes or the experience of a sailboat. Is that correct?
You've got it.
Okay. I often find myself when talking about spirituality or about life in general and utilizing metaphors of being on a boat in the ocean, being at harbor, being too long at harbor or too comfortable. Um, is that kind of where you're going with the book?
Well, actually, it's actually more about a little boat that is trying to figure out life
Hmm.
and is doing it all the wrong ways and fills with all the emotions of like envy, depression, despair, all of those. And the boat realizing there's got to be a better way.
Hmm. And it's an emotional experience for the boat.
Yeah, it's finding. Well, in my case, the ocean's God or source or divine. I don't. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets the water. The at one time when it's in such despair, it goes out on the water, and the water it gets windy, and the water overtakes the sailboat. And when it wakes up, the wind pulls it back out from the bottom of the ocean, and when it wakes up it realizes some of the ocean is in it, and it
Mm.
you know and it realizes at the beginning of the book, it's like he was told that he came from the ocean and will go back to the ocean, and
Mm.
didn't make any sense to the little sailboat until that moment.
Right. Sometimes those metaphors don't make sense until we've actually gone through it.
Right, and then from that point on it's about learning how to live a different way. Not
Mm-hmm.
from I named my ego Screaming Mimi, and it's to not live from Screaming Mimi, not to let her rule or
Right.
him rule, whatever you choose,
Yeah.
but to rule, let the higher self start ruling.
Yeah.
And of course, being human doesn't always work.
Right. Right. That's the trick, basically. Starting at zero and working your way up to 100.
Yeah, yeah,
And a lot of that is, I think, reliance on what we would call like superior moral structure that we might
yes.
not have from our family, but we might need to find in life to attain that 100.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because in the book, the sailboat encounters a pontoon boat who is just so happy going slow, not going, why don't I go faster? Why can't I go fast? but thrilled with going slow and having people enjoy on top riding on the boat.
Yeah.
And then another mentor is a lighthouse
Mm.
that the sailboat encounters.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. And a lot of spirituality, um, ocean and lighthouse. These are things that take on strong themes, strong meanings. Probably because we've been involved with the ocean, from the beginning. It's
Yes.
been part of who we are and part of our experience. Something to conquer that I would say, has never been conquered.
I don't think can ever be, in a way, if you think about the depth of the ocean and stuff they're finding out still
Yeah.
about what they find in the ocean that they never knew was there.
Right. Yeah. That we had that recent incident with the submersible. Just as more proof that you have to go there with extreme reverence and respect and fear and preparation.
Yeah.
Um, the depths are very intense, and we only see the surface when we're at the beach. We see the waves crashing. I think that's pretty intense. I think it's very overwhelming. I think it's very calming too. Once it becomes a background, sound, a part of the a fabric, but it by itself is very powerful. It's very creative and destructive.
Hey, but that's
Um,
interesting what you just said about the power of it. Is that, but at the same time, when you hear it, it could be very soothing and calming.
mm-hmm.
But isn't that a relationship with divine that it's so incredibly mysteriously and powerful, but it is so soothing, calming, and peaceful?
Yeah, yeah, perfect, exactly. And if you've been to the beach a lot, you can be there talking, and the waves will seem to crash louder at certain points, almost demanding attention, and then it may just kind of settle back down into that background, ambiance. It's a very interesting experience, and then of course, they say we came from, in an evolutionary standard, as far as biology goes, that the source of all life comes out of the fact that we have oceans on this planet. That there was a chance for biology to make it on the land. It's because we're a water-based planet.
Yeah.
Purely, if it was just a desert planet, there wouldn't be anything.
Life.
Yeah, there wouldn't be life. Right. So it's the source of that, and the movement is the source of, uh, you know, our beginnings. Yeah. Now, in your book, it sounds like it has a lot of spiritual connotations. Does it kind of work to help others in guidance in their life?
Yes. What it's actually an autobiography in some ways.
Mm,
And it is the autobiography of everybody, should they choose.
right.
Um, like my words that were on my sailboat would be anger, depression. Your words might be different of what you had as a young person
Right.
and growing up. But it's still the same journey about each of us, I think, have a GPS in us that set wants to call you on the way home.
Yeah.
And so and then you have an experience, and mine had to be where it was like there's got to be a better way than living this way.
Mm, mm-hmm.
um, which is, I think, happens to a lot of people, and then they start searching, so what is that better way?
Yeah.
And even when you find it, all the other stuff just doesn't go away because you've been Suzuki was a music teacher, and he said something once that I think relates to spirituality as well. And he said, if you are playing a piece of music and you make a mistake, and you make that mistake over and over again, for every one time you made that mistake, you have to do it 100 times right
Mm,
to really ingrain it in you. And if you think about it, even when you start going, oh, there's more, and even when you find your more, because I don't believe it's in any, what's right for you in finding what that more is might be different for me. But once you start that path and you find it, it doesn't mean, oh, okay, I've arrived. It actually means I'm beginning. But
Mm.
everything that happened before was part of the beginning to get you to the point that you are. And if one who believes in past lives would say to get you where you are now, all those other lives were necessary for it.
Yeah. Do you believe in past lives?
I do.
Okay.
I do personally, but I know a lot of people who don't, which is fine. But does it really matter? Because it's actually about this life,
Right.
unless you need something about your past to help you.
Yeah. I think the idea in life in general, which would extend itself to other lives, is that uh, it's about alignment and it's about vibration and it's about getting that scratch in the record that, like you were saying, you might hit that spot and do it wrong on the notes. And there's a chance that every time that comes up again, as you pass by again, that opportunity to correct it will be either a major choice between making that mistake again or uh, passing through it somehow, correcting that sound so that it's correct. And then after that, because of habit, I think that's correct. We would have to do it 100 times over just so that the the right way of choice in that outcome is done over and over and over again. And so maybe in looking into past lives, even just from this position, looking back to things that we did in this life or in other lives, the idea is to get that hindsight 2020 and say, well, I don't want the next time I come around to this to be that same exact experience because I didn't really like the way it turned out. you
Well,
know,
yeah, but it is
maybe
all
it's like you don't like your own reaction. Yeah,
yes. I was going to say, and it is all experiences. That's all it is, and we get to choose how we're going to go through an experience. And if you don't like how you went through an experience, you don't beat yourself up, which sometimes I do.
yeah,
I just went through one where it took me a couple of months to stop beating myself up.
yeah.
And here I say don't beat yourself up in my writings and stuff.
Of
But
course. Yeah,
sometimes it's so hard not to,
yeah,
you know, and then you go, and I know I've gotten a lot better where I don't go, oh, mea culpa, mea culpa.
yeah.
It's like, okay, I had an experience. What did I learn from this? And let me do something different next time.
Right. And that's also you taking time to contemplate the situation. And I'd say also making a plan of action into the future as to how best you're going to remember, the situation that happened and how out the outcome. When you're young, when you're an adolescent, when you're a teenager, you're going through a lot. There's a lot going on in the world. It's moving very slowly. I think that was for me. It was like, wow, this is going to take forever. I
And
don't
then
see an
you go,
end.
and then you go, how did that go by so
Yeah,
fast?
yeah. I made the classic mistake of wanting to grow up really fast. I wanted to get to work real fast. It's like, like, just get me out of high school and let me get to work. Like all my other friends who were, 3 years older than me and already were out of high school. I was like, well, what about me? And then I look back and I said, what a waste. What a waste.
Yeah.
I just blew it. I could have really enjoyed the moment and I was stuck trying to get to the future. And
But isn't it hard to stay in the moment? It's very
yeah,
because we are a culture where we look to the future.
yeah,
I
a
think
lot.
in general.
Yeah.
I mean, how young do kids start getting asked the question, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Yeah, I think it depends on multiple factors, but it's probably pretty young. And I know I was asked when I was, for sure, I had to do a school paper in second grade, which I don't know what kind of paper it was. Second or third grade, what career do you want to have when you grow up? And it was like, oh, what careers are there? But I think they gave you choices. Like, here's the basic standard policeman, fireman, you know.
Well,
um, yeah.
my granddaughter just graduated nursery school, and
Mm-hmm.
they ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And let me tell you, in nursery school, those answers are fantastic.
Oh, I'll bet.
One kid wanted to be a ice cream car driver so he
Mm,
could eat all the ice cream he wanted. I loved it. It was like,
yeah.
okay, you're looking at this right.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, and that's the imagination, but it's also looking forward. And I think that's kind of the design of school in general is to prep, is to be prepared and to instill that idea of having a goal, which is all really good stuff, quite honestly. But how early? You know, you also want to just have the experience of living and having fun.
Yeah, I think that's really important. But I
Yeah.
think sometimes I saw it as my kids were growing up. Sometimes parents want to try to dictate what they're supposed to be when they grow up
Yeah.
instead of allowing whoever this soul is
Right.
to a parent should basically be asking questions to learn what that soul is craving and desiring
Right.
and not putting into them what they're going to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard trick there. Yeah, being an architect for somebody else's life or being a shepherd.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the goal is to be a shepherd, and the desire and of control is to be the architect. To try and design it so it's a specific way that kind of robs. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but designs for the child a path versus just allowing them to find that path for themselves. And it's definitely two different styles of raising a child, but the outcomes, I guess, is what you look for, is to see what kind of society we have. If we have generations raised as being allowed to search and discover themselves, their path, their career, versus something that's been very controlled and designed from a very early age. I think it's just really hard for a parent to let go of that control factor. Like, well, this will
No,
be best for you.
yeah, no.
Yeah,
But we're designed to be creative.
right.
Every single one of us. And and so even if you have three different careers, you could love each of them and go, okay, I've done experiencing this. What do I want to create around me now?
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of our superpowers, actually, is creativity.
It is. It's a gift.
Yeah, yeah. It's not something that other species shine on, as much. Um, but we have this very strong streak of of ingenuity, creativity, however you want to look at it. It's one of our definite vessels that allows us to think outside of the box and come up with solutions and drive change within the world. It's an amazing thing. Does the little sailboat have lessons involving creativity and?
No, she hasn't gone there yet. But
Okay.
I mean, creativity in her case, just creativity and allowing yourself to grow and change. I mean, that in itself is creative when you don't stay in that box and the humdrum da da
Right.
da da. Who wants to live in that?
Right, right. Well, that in my metaphor would be living in the harbor, you know,
That, yeah, same
hanging
thing.
out
It
with
could
the
be
rising
really nice for,
tides.
it could be nice for a little while,
Yeah,
but then you want to go back out.
right. I think that's the craving of adolescence is to always we're on in the harbor, and when can I be released? When can I be allowed to get out and go my own route? I don't think it's for everybody, but it's definitely for a good majority of people want the freedom of self-expression and experience, and the waves would definitely allow for a lot of that. Yeah,
Just a thought that just came by because I don't know. With yes, we want our own experiences, and if you have somebody who is guiding your experiences, maybe that's the experience you were searching for.
right. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, and that's in that meant to be kind of channel.
Yeah.
where you're exactly where you need to be. And the choices that you make, of course, will take you on a course, of your own making by your choice.
But isn't
And
it
but
wonderful we can change courses?
we can always change. It's the beauty of it. Yeah. Yeah.
There's some great movies out there about people who did just that.
Oh yeah. Well, what I find that has helped me a lot was one of my strongest mental mindsets in life, which is hard. They're hard won lessons and hard won thought. Is that I needed to be grateful for where I was, no matter what was happening, because I didn't know the alternative, and
That's
perhaps that worst place that I thought I was at was actually saving me from the end, or even worse fate. That I just wasn't aware that I was being saved from a situation, or that I had
yeah.
to acquiesce I had to have something happen based on all of the decisions made prior, but I still made a choice that sent me in the right direction versus an even more intense or traumatic or possibly a death decision.
I think about that always like it, if I'm getting close to missing a plane or something
Right.
else,
Exactly.
not to panic. I wasn't if I wasn't supposed to be there. And that attitude came out of 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I knew four people that were supposed to be in that building that day.
Yeah.
One, a tree fell in the back of their car and they couldn't get out.
Mm,
And, I have to be. I had
exactly.
a cousin whose son got sick, so he had to stay home. And
Mm-hmm.
Mimi, of course, is probably going, I have to be there. I have to be there. And
Right.
then that happened. It's like, oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's getting somewhere late and being upset about being late. This is where I come up with the angels are always laughing at us because we think that they just saved our life,
I
and we're
know.
like wow. But it really, that mindset for me has just allowed me to be a little bit more present in the moment and allowing for fluctuation and change in all my decisions, my thoughts of what would happen. It just allowed for a lot more wind of destiny between um, my wanted outcome and reality, And, that's something that I think you would get on the ocean is that you just don't know. You can't predict the weather.
Especially if you're a sailboat and you have no motor, you can't switch directions. You
Mm-hmm.
have to go wherever the wind is going to take you.
Yeah, yeah, you're at the whims of the wind. And I know that they, of course, follow trade winds, in the world. But to get to where they're going, they know that the wind's going to be blowing in the
Yep.
spring. It's going to be blowing down this specific area to get to that area there. But right at the whims of the wind, at the whims of storms, and
But they're still respecting the wind and allowing it.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there could be a hurricane, it could be, who knows?
Yeah.
You have to, you just don't know because predicting the weather, we're very good at it now. I'd say it's kind of amazing how well we can do it based on radar and all of that. Um, get a little idea what's going to happen in 2 days. It's still not exact. It still doesn't rain when they say it's going to rain. you know?
I used to say all the weathermen in the world get together, throw in, pick out what it's going to be that day, and everybody goes with that, and somebody's right.
Yeah, yeah.
But we
Somebody
have
gets it.
gotten much better since I've said that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you ever see the spaghetti models that they do for the track of the hurricane,
Yeah.
and they're all like, "Wow, that's wild." It's a lot that agree, and then there's those few that are just completely like, "Where is it going?" And
Yeah.
they really don't know. This is their like, "Hey, anything's possible." This is what we go off of. This is why we're 80% inaccurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Do you have another book in store?
Yes, but I waiting for it to be. This book truly was divinely inspired, and I'm
Yeah.
sure of it. And I learned a lot of lessons even writing it
Mm,
because I would sit. I'm very type A personality in a lot of ways, and I
yeah.
would sit down and I'm going to write this much today, and nothing would come.
Yeah.
And it took twice for that to happen before I realized, oh, I just wait. and it'll come. And
Right.
that's how that was done. So yes, I think I'm writing 2 more books.
Mm.
And no, I'm not sure what they're about yet. I don't know if it's going to go, because the sailboat is just a very broad stroke.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm going to go further into it where it's much more talking about one thing, or whether it's a new one. One of the things I'm thinking might happen is, in my blog, I have how Theresa plans to save the world.
Mm.
And it shows up in my blog every once in a while, step one,
Right.
step two. But how Theresa plans to save the world is the only way you can, by doing your work on yourself.
Right. Looking inward.
You're looking inward.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, one step is forgiveness. One step, so there's different steps. I thought that might be a fun thing to write about,
Yeah,
but I don't know for sure yet.
that would be. Yeah, that'd be great. I think that what's great is that you can write these things out, you can make the book, and people will find it, and that falls on that whole they'll find it when they need it kind of
Yes.
scenario.
And I in my husband, the other thing is, my husband said one thing to me that I hold to, is that if one person reads this book and changes their life, you've
Right.
done your job.
Yeah.
And if nobody reads it, you still done your job in my eyes, because I was led to do it and
Yeah.
I said yes.
Right. It's constructive for you,
Yes.
and I I came upon that pretty early with writing, because I felt every time I would write, I'd handwrite. I was handwriting a book. Every time that I would do it, I just felt like less tension, like I had released something that was pent up, and so I just kind of got addicted just to writing, and because it was just this, oh, I feel good afterward. I feel like I just it's off my shoulders, and that by itself is very powerful. But then in writing something instructional, you stumble upon learning yourself. You stumble upon this method where you can discover what's going on and put it to paper.
Every
Did,
once
did
in a
that work
while,
for you that way?
well, yeah, I every once in a while I read this book and I'm still at awe that I wrote the book. Like
Right.
it's like, wow, I did that. So yes, I've learned from my book.
Yeah. And that divinely inspired could also be, I was riding on my highest at that point. I was allowing the most purest form of my creativity to flow onto the paper and to write the words, instead of
Well,
being caught in the filters of life and all the different stuff that'll happen. You were writing on a real pure basis.
if you think about the word inspiration, it's in spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that's great. Yeah. Well, that's where does it come from? That's the whole idea
yes,
of not knowing where these inventions or these ideas come from. They just, oh, it just hit me.
and it is like a quick download. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
it would be much easier to do it if we had this.
Yeah, yeah. Now, do you write down ideas? Or are you still getting a flow of
Yes,
ideas and inspiration?
actually, actually I just started writing again. I stopped for a couple of months. I have lost, in a matter of a month, 2 aunts, my mother, and
Mm,
3 other people.
wow.
And I needed some time off.
Yeah.
And I wrote again for the first time this weekend.
Okay. It's a process. It's helped the
It started
process.
again. And you
Yeah.
know what? Every experience from everything I just went through, I'll be writing about.
Yeah. Right. Yes, it will. Life experience will bleed into whatever creativity, whatever you're doing. You
Yeah.
know, and to help you suss it out, which is great.
And
And
and the way I see it is, I think so many times people have trouble talking about what they go through because they think only they go through it.
yeah.
We all go through it
Right.
differently. We've all had deaths. We've had deaths where very hard to process because um, of the relationship within it.
Right.
We've had deaths. When my father died, it was beautiful. my mourning didn't last very long at all, but we
Mm,
had such a strong bond. With my mother, it was harder. We had a difficult relationship. And afterwards, when I talked at the beginning that, when you beat yourself up,
right.
I I stayed with her all the time. I was there. That part I didn't beat myself up over, but I also recognized a waste of time when you don't try to engage
Yeah.
and share how you feel, and instead of accepting it just the way it is. And now sometimes you're not going to change things, but you cannot complain if you don't even try.
Right. Right. But then again, hindsight, you
Yes,
can
it's like,
recognize that the outcome of that relationship didn't feel or sit right with you. It was more of a challenge, and you can look to see like, well, how could I have done the whole thing better? How could I have approached that relationship better? Um, that can inform you in how to better work your current relationships. And
yes,
again, a hard-won lesson. I think that one of the great things about what you're writing about is that it informs the rest of us. It gives us that thing we need, which is this book of life. That is something that I used to say. Like, there's no book of how to live life, and I know
right.
that there's books out there that exactly what they are, uh, but there isn't like something that's just like, here you go. This is obvious answers to everything that you need to know. You have to learn them, and by reading, we gain the experience, even slightly, of somebody else that has gone through that same thing.
It's true. And we all, with death, why I know that's where I'm going a little bit
Mm-hmm.
is because I know what I have gone through. Everybody goes through
Right.
a little different, a little more a different emotion about it, and or even the fact that somebody you love is dying. I
Right.
could share with, because
Yeah.
it was awful. My poor mom, she had terrible COPD. It
Mm.
was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Her breathing, and I would sit there. She had somebody living with her at the time, so she would do 12 hours and I would do 12 hours, or
Wow.
I
Yeah.
didn't do 12 hours at first, but when I saw where it was going, I started staying there.
Yeah.
And I would play Ruth Fazell, who is a Christian music writer, but a lot of her music has no words in it, and I love
Mm.
it. It's like
That's great.
really, really beautiful. I would have that on the background, and I would read to her writings that inspired me,
Mm. Yeah.
and I knew she would hear it. I knew she was hearing it,
Yeah.
and so what ended up happening, it was a beautiful death in the sense of we had such a healing together, and it was beautiful in that sense.
Yeah.
And it's something to write about, to say, look, there's you can help somebody have a wonderful, a meaningful death, no matter
Yeah.
how hard it is.
Right.
And well, that's what a death doula does.
That's what I was gonna say. Just what came to mind. Yeah. Exactly. And well, and I think some people get it's like a lesson, and there's multiple facets to the lesson of the endings of life. Um, they come early, they come late, but they come. There's
Yes.
there's no way around dealing with the endings of life, and um, I don't know who gets it better because it's just one of those things where we all have to figure out how we're going to approach it. And like you said, depending on the relationship, is going to be a factor to how we handle or experience somebody's passing. Um, but I actually was looking to have a death doula on the show because it's very fascinating to me. Um, it's a part of everybody's life, and it's a skill, depending on how many times you have to go through it, that you have to gain this wall or barrier for yourself over these, not so good endings.
I just worked with a shaman
Hmm,
that she is a death doula,
Okay.
But also as shaman, from a shaman standpoint, when they're ready, you can help them
Yeah.
cross.
Right. Yeah. And what a powerful thing to do. You know, I think that for a lot of people, it's very tragic and it's full of sorrow. If you have a healthy um, philosophy or understanding of life and death and have a belief in afterlife of some sort, I believe that may be even where it comes from, depending on where you go with it. The idea of some kind of afterlife or a reincarnation softens the blow of a big loss because you'll see them again somehow.
You will.
Um, do you kind of prescribe to that? Uh, that there's a passing and that there's a maybe like a convergence again.
Oh gosh, yes. Isn't that? I mean, we're afraid of death because it's so unknown. It's not known until you know.
Right.
But but you're right. If you have a relationship that there is, you be ready. I have a cousin that they always say she's the happiest person who's ready to die now.
Hmm.
Like today's
Mm-hmm.
a good day to die because of her relationship with the divine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. I dwell into the thought of it often based on old ancient scripts and writings and understandings of it. And it's, there's been a lot of people to say it's this, that, or the other. They do know that there's a chemical released in the brain, DMT, when you die that kind of gives you a whoosh, a big flow out as far as consciousness goes. And in some of the Eastern philosophies, there's this concept of Maya, which is this land of illusion that permeates and it separates us. It's like the last step or one of the last levels before the highest absolute. And then a lot of us get caught in the illusion and then get pushed back to reincarnation or something like that.
Well,
I
I do think, and I'm not going to know. I would never argue with anybody when they don't think the same. How can you argue about something you don't know yet?
Yeah, yeah, it's fun to
but
philosophize about.
but I do think we have a choice whether we're going to come back or not.
Yeah.
And it's like I was when I was pregnant with my mom. Well, I mean, when I was in my mom,
Mm-hmm.
I was a month late, one full
Mm.
month late,
A month. Wow.
and and somebody once said to me, "Well, that's because you changed your mind and wanted to stay where
Mm.
you were, and it took you a while to go. Okay, I got to do it this way."
Yeah. Wow. A month. A month is a lot. That's a long time.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of worry on the mom side.
Well, that many years ago, I don't think they knew to be worried.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's wild. Well, and I think a lot of because I prescribe, I believe in astrology, and I believe it's an impression of gravity. When you leave the womb, I think that's a moment of star impression of the gravity of everything around. It's the way I inform myself, the way I feel secure in the belief of astrology is that it makes some kind of scientific sense, and that's how I
It
look at it.
does.
It's a
It
form
does.
of gravity, and you picking to come out later, and it's me even saying you picking
Yeah.
is more that your soul was suited for a very specific lineup, and it wasn't gonna happen any other way. Like that's just the way it is. And so you are probably very much that 1 month later sign, whereas somebody would say, well, if their due date, if they were gestated for a certain amount of time, they're probably really lining up with that sign. But for me, it's all about gravity. It's all about when the actual occurrence happens that you're born imprinted out of that nebulous zone, out of the safety of the womb.
Does that mean, because I've been told to do this and I'm just so bad at it, is to know where the moon is at. Like, is it a
Mm.
crescent, or and make your learn to feel it, the
Yeah.
energy change. I mean, everybody could feel. A lot of people feel the full moon, whether they don't sleep or
Yeah.
whatever. But that we have the ability to feel the moon at all times as it's changing, and the planets as you
Yes.
start. You have to tap into it. So, do you, when you're making decisions, do you work a little bit around the moon?
Well, with this show, I think I've decided to work around Mercury retrograde because it's a beast when it comes to communication. It turns everything backwards, makes sure that you've double and triple checked everything. And if you haven't, you'll have, cancellations and, uh, lots of glitches and errors and random strangeness that will happen involving communication. So, because that's the vehicle of this whole show, I had a hell of a time during Mercury retrograde. I
That
said,
was there for a while.
I'm good. Yeah, it goes on for but like five. It goes on too long, and it only happens 3 to 4 times a year. But I've written it out. It's not gonna. I'm not gonna do anything to do with audio and video during that time period because it's just too. It's just too scrambling. And I've already when it happens, I already have a lot to deal with for myself with retrograde. So yes, you can be attuned to it. It's much like we're a very interesting psychological species that we're able to do these things because it's present because it is something about our nature. Astrology can take a symbological representation, and then you can become very used to how you react when that occurrence happens over and over and over again because these things go around in circles. So you can become really used to like the reaction. Like, what's going on? What's happening? Why do I feel this way? I felt this way last month. Or something like that could be informing you that that's the moon. If it's a monthly kind of thing, you may have an idea as to why, based on, oh, the moon must be full because my energies are not feeling in control. They're feeling at odds with my emotions are feeling at odds with my ability to control them. And that would be an opposition of the sun and the moon. So you can utilize, and astrology has lots of them. So you can tune into the phase of any of these planets, any of these gravitational forces. The moon is just really easy for us because it controls, I don't know, 90 something percent of our body. As water. It controls our whole body. If you take they take oyster shells from the East Coast, and they open and they close with the tides set to the East Coast. If you take them to Wisconsin, they will open and close as if there's a tide in Wisconsin. Like it's just a rhythm of the moon. Um, so yeah, you can definitely tune into the moon. It's really, I think that's probably one of the easier ones, but you have to be really attuned to your subconscious and to your emotions, the emotional pull. So it takes a lot of like turning off the bright light of the sun that is conscious daily, every day, drive, drive, drive. It may be a little tricky for an alpha personality who's very much on target and, wanting to kind of drive results in the moment because you'll have to sit and you have to contemplate through the day, through the week, through the month, and kind of just observe yourself and see what the kind of reaction you're getting.
Huh?
Um,
Being led, being inspired, or
yeah,
seeing.
yes, you have to
Let
allow it.
yourself be inspired, to allow. That's the best
Yeah,
word. I like that word.
yeah, you have to allow it, and I think anybody can do it. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of being able to shut off all the stuff and allowing for you to experience the moon. There's a moon gazing. The moon gazing is really neat. Drawing down the moon, they call it, where you stare at the moon.
There,
Uh,
I read one time, and I actually came up. I call it feet, but I read this, and I love it. Is
hmm,
you have to feel all things, embrace all things, allow all things, trust all things, and that what leads to transcending.
hmm. That's two T's. That's good. Trust and transcendence. That's great. Yeah. And that's, see that, that is a metaphor that helps inform you as well and keeps you kind of on track, you know?
But
That's
it's
fantastic.
interesting. You could use something so wonderful that God put something so wonderful to help us to do just that.
Yeah.
Astrology.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if you look at just, it's like the discovery of anything. And I think that we, like the ocean, we are such an undiscovered terrain of our consciousness, of our understanding of our life. We just don't know the depths. We haven't really worked with them. I know they're doing a lot now. Scientific research and whatnot is looking to dig into more of our chemistry and all these different things that are very physical. But there's so many realms that we exist on that are
Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah.
Um, One thing that I love about, for me, that I gain from reading books such as yours is I can gain a tool from somebody else's experience of a way, a method to live life in a more cohesive way, you know, having another resource.
Yeah. I
And
love reading.
yeah, yeah, it's great to read. We have to experience these things, so you know, it's a matter of reading the right material. I think is very important. You know, it's like watching the right kind of TV.
Well, I know my reading is all pretty much spiritual.
Yeah,
You only have so many hours in a day, and I don't read fiction anymore.
yeah, yeah, because it seems like a waste. Yeah, though some people write fiction with the idea that they can tell the story and relay a message through the story. A
Yeah,
lot of
well,
stuff is not
I
like that.
and they're inspired to write that way, and there's some great books out there. It's but that's just for me. I wanna
Yeah.
it if I was to say what my calling is more than anything else
Mm-hmm.
is to love,
Mm.
to share. I think it's all of our callings. That's who we are. We're
Yeah.
love and form,
Yeah.
and and I just want to know more, 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 more. That's where my desire goes.
Yeah. To love and to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah. There you go. It's the three L's: living, loving, and learning.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good place to be if you can align yourself with that. And I think that when you're really young, there's just so much extra going on that it's really hard to suss out what
Well, I
is the
think when
proper
you're
way.
young, you're still learning about everything out here.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
once you've learned enough about out here and you realize there's got to be more, whether it is like for whatever reason that makes you go, what's more, is when you finally start going, okay, what's in?
Mm-hmm.
And once you start realizing that's the way, and you start living life inside out instead of outside in, for me,
Mm-hmm.
that's when joy first started, really started. That to know this is first, nothing else. It's just icing. Like
Yeah.
a new car is great, but when you're doing it to satisfy yourself, well, you're going to have to then pay for the car, and then that's not fun. So the car is icing. The the joy, the peace, everything we truly want in life, we can find within us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. A book that I really enjoyed was Siddhartha
Never read that one.
by
Was
Herman Hesse. It's kind of the journey to becoming a Buddha.
oh
It's
cool.
he's his life challenges and thoughts about what he wanted to become and making a decision to change. And just a very, very good, but on a search, on a path of discovery, of self-discovery, searching for, searching for something. And
Yes.
very good book, very powerful, and you know, another thing that informs us and gives us life lessons and potentially tools to work with. Um, as far as for your book, do you? where could it be found? Where can we find your book, first off?
Well, there are a couple places. It is on Amazon. It's also, my publisher is IP Books.
Hmm.
And then I have a blog. My name, Theresa, has an H in it, Contaxis, CONTAXIS.com. And I sell it there. And I have short writings on there.
Okay, that's great, and that's a way to stay in touch with you and find
Yes.
out what you're doing and what your next book is coming out, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have plans to do any kind of signing or anything like that as for the book?
I have. I have. Whenever I'm asked, I'll go. I don't
Oh,
mind.
okay.
Um, it's it's an honor to talk with people. It's fun because everybody's stories. I love hearing people's stories and journeys. And even for me, this book is about touching anybody who's like starting to go, there's got to be a better way. So what you get out of the book, everybody, it's a great book to read, and you would read it fast. But if somebody is like going, oh my gosh, I feel like my whole life is falling apart, there's nothing for me. It will. I would hope I pray that that's who it really truly helps somebody start and see there's another way.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and we can definitely put it out there and hope that it finds the right person at the right time. That's the
That's
nature
what
of it.
it's about. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being here today. Really enjoyed our discussion.
I did too. Thank you so much for having me. And
And
I will be looking into astrology next.
okay, any questions? Always feel free to throw them at me. I'm glad to answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye bye now.
Bye bye.